Did you know that in the 11th century, a single pound of sugar was worth more than a human life? This sweet substance, now found in nearly every processed food on our shelves, was once a treasure so rare and coveted that it was called white gold. Its value was immense, reserved for the wealthiest kings, the most powerful popes, and the most skilled apothecaries who used it as medicine. People would trade vast acres of land or pledge their loyalty for just a small cone of this crystalline sweetness. This simple ingredient, a staple of our modern diet, began its long and complicated journey not as a food, but as a divine mystery, a symbol of unimaginable luxury and power that would one day change the world in ways no one could have foreseen. The story of sugar begins thousands of years ago in the lush tropical highlands of New Guinea. It was here that ancient peoples discovered a tall, thick grass unlike any other. They found that by chewing on its fibrous stalk, they could release a wonderfully sweet juice. This was sugarcane. For these early communities, it was not a crop to be refined or processed. It was a simple, natural pleasure, a treat chewed straight from the earth. They saw this sweet reed as a gift from the spirits, a piece of the divine made tangible. The plant slowly migrated with seafaring peoples, traveling across the islands of the Pacific, a humble passenger on a journey that would eventually encircle the globe. From its island origins, sugarcane eventually found its way to the Indian subcontinent around 1500 BCE. It was in India that the real magic began. Indian innovators developed the first methods for crystallizing sugar. They learned to press the cane, boil the juice, and let it cool into solid, transportable crystals. This was a revolutionary step. Sugar was no longer just a fleeting taste from a chewed stalk. It became a storable, tradable commodity. The Persians, neighbors to the west, were mesmerized. When the Persian Emperor Darius invaded India in 510 BCE, his soldiers encountered what they called the reed, which gives honey without bees. They eagerly adopted the cultivation and refining techniques, making sugar a central part of their own cuisine and economy. The Persian Empire became a hub for sugar production, and its influence spread the knowledge of this sweet marvel even further. They guarded the secrets of its cultivation closely, understanding the immense wealth it could generate. Sugar was incorporated into their most elaborate dishes, a sign of hospitality and status. It was mixed with nuts and fruits to create delectable sweets, and used in savory dishes to balance complex flavors. Through the vast trade networks of the Silk Road, Persian merchants introduced sugar to the wider world, but it remained an exotic and incredibly expensive spice. Its journey was still in its infancy, but the stage was set for sugar to captivate the palates and pocketbooks of civilizations far beyond its tropical home. The Arab world became the next great custodian of sugar's secrets. As the Islamic empires expanded across the Middle East, North Africa, and into Spain, they carried sugarcane with them. They were not just conquerors, they were master agriculturalists and engineers. They established vast, irrigated sugar plantations in places like Egypt, Sicily, and Andalusia. They refined the crystallization process, creating sugars of different purities and textures. For them, sugar was more than a food. It was a key ingredient in medicine, a preservative for fruits, and a symbol of the sophisticated culture that flourished in their great cities. Through their bustling markets, this white gold began to trickle into the rest of Europe, a rare and mysterious substance from a distant land. When European knights embarked on the Crusades in the 11th century, they encountered sugar on a scale they had never imagined. In the Holy Land, they saw fields of sugarcane and tasted foods sweetened in ways that were completely foreign to their honey-based palates. They were enchanted. These returning crusaders brought back tales of this incredible new spice, along with small, precious samples. Sugar quickly became the ultimate status symbol among the European elite. Kings and queens would display elaborate sugar sculptures at their banquets, intricate castles and figures molded from pure sweetness, designed not to be eaten, but to showcase their immense wealth and power. It was a luxury beyond the reach of any common person. The city-state of Venice rose to power by monopolizing this lucrative trade. Venetian merchants established exclusive contracts with sugar producers in the eastern Mediterranean, controlling the flow of this precious commodity into Europe. They became the gatekeepers of sweetness, and their city grew fantastically wealthy as a result. The price was astronomical. A small sugar loaf could cost as much as a skilled craftsman's monthly wages. It was sold in apothecaries, locked away with rare spices and potent medicines. Doctors prescribed it for everything from coughs to heart ailments, believing its pure, sweet nature held curative properties. Sugar was not for everyday consumption. It was a potent drug and a display of opulence. This era cemented sugar's reputation as a substance of desire. Its rarity and cost only fueled the demand. European nobles developed an insatiable sweet tooth, and the quest for a cheaper, more reliable source of sugar began to drive exploration. The Portuguese, seeking to bypass the Venetian monopoly, started planting sugarcane on the Atlantic islands they discovered, like Madeira and the Canary Islands. This was a pivotal moment. It marked the beginning of Europe's direct involvement in sugar production. This pursuit of sweetness would soon lead them across the ocean, setting the stage for a much darker chapter in sugar's history, one that would be built on exploitation and suffering on an unprecedented scale. The discovery of the Americas by Christopher Columbus in 1492 changed everything for sugar. He had seen the profitable sugar plantations on the Canary Islands, and knew the climate of the Caribbean was perfect for growing sugarcane. On his second voyage he brought cane cuttings with him, planting the seeds of a new economic order. The islands of Hispaniola, Cuba, and Jamaica, along with the vast lands of Brazil, became the new center of the sugar world. European powers, Spain, Portugal, Britain, France, and the Netherlands, raced to establish colonies dedicated to one thing: producing massive quantities of sugar to satisfy Europe's growing addiction. This was the start of the sugar revolution, a boom that would generate immense fortunes for empires. However, sugarcane is a notoriously difficult and labor-intensive crop. It required a huge workforce to plant, harvest, and process the cane under the scorching tropical sun. The work was brutal, dangerous, and relentless. Initially, colonists tried to force the indigenous populations to work the fields, but disease and harsh conditions decimated their numbers. To solve this labor problem, European colonial powers turned to Africa. They initiated the transatlantic slave trade, a horrific system that forcibly transported millions of Africans across the ocean in chains. These enslaved people were treated not as humans but as property, bought and sold to toil on the sugar plantations in what was a life sentence of hard labor. The sugar plantation was a machine of immense cruelty. The entire system was designed for maximum profit at the expense of human life. Enslaved workers faced grueling conditions, from the back-breaking work of cutting cane with machetes to the dangers of the boiling houses, where limbs were often lost in the grinding mills. Life expectancy was tragically short. The profits generated by their unpaid labor were staggering, funding the Industrial Revolution in Europe and building the grand cities of London, Paris, and Amsterdam. The beautiful sugar bowls on European tables and the sweet tea enjoyed in polite society were directly connected to this brutal system of exploitation. The sweetness of sugar was drenched in the bitterness of slavery. This dark alliance between sugar and slavery shaped the modern world. It created a triangular trade route where European ships carried manufactured goods to Africa, traded them for enslaved people, transported those people to the Americas through the horrific Middle Passage, and then returned to Europe with raw sugar, molasses, and rum. This economic engine fueled colonial expansion for centuries. The wealth of nations was built on the backs of the enslaved, and the social and racial hierarchies established during this period have left deep and lasting scars that persist to this day. The history of sugar is inseparable from the history of slavery. One cannot be understood without the other. The Industrial Revolution eventually brought an end to the plantation system as we knew it, but it did not end our craving for sugar. In the 19th and 20th centuries, new technologies made sugar production cheaper and more efficient than ever before. Sugar beet processing was perfected in Europe, breaking the reliance on tropical cane. What was once the luxury of kings became a cheap commodity for the masses. Food manufacturers discovered that adding sugar to their products made them more palatable, extended their shelf life, and most importantly, kept customers coming back for more. Sugar began appearing in everything, from bread and canned vegetables to sauces and savory snacks, often in hidden forms. This dramatic shift has led us to our current global health crisis. The human body, which evolved in an environment where sugar was scarce, is not equipped to handle the massive quantities we now consume daily. Our once rare treat has become a pervasive, ever-present ingredient, leading to a host of modern diseases. The explosion in rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and certain types of cancer can be directly linked to our overconsumption of added sugars. The same substance that was once prescribed as a medicine by apothecaries is now a primary driver of chronic illness, overwhelming healthcare systems around the world. The dark history of sugar has morphed into a modern public health tragedy. To understand the historical allure, we can look back at the desserts that captivated our ancestors. Consider the 18th century creation of caramel. This was a true art form. Sugar was carefully heated in a copper pan until it melted, bubbled, and transformed into a liquid of deep amber color with a rich, nutty aroma. This molten sugar could be spun into delicate nets, poured into molds to create shining gems, or used to coat fruits and nuts. For people of that era, whose diets were often bland, the intense, complex sweetness of caramel was a revelation. It was a taste of pure luxury, a multi-sensory experience that showcased both the cook's skill and the host's wealth. These historical sweets were special because they were rare. A dessert like candied fruit, a medieval delicacy where fruit was painstakingly simmered in sugar syrup until it became translucent and jewel-like, was a labor of love reserved for feast days and special occasions. It was a way of preserving the fleeting flavors of summer and transforming a simple fruit into a precious confection. The love for these dishes highlights the fundamental human attraction to sweetness. Yet, the context has completely changed. What was once a celebrated, occasional indulgence has become a ubiquitous, daily habit, and the sweet ingredient that once built empires now threatens the health of our global population.